For Comedy Hype News, I'm Elena Williams. January 16th, 1997 is the day that will live in the minds of the Cosby family as one unquantifiable tragedy, because that was the day that Bill and Camille Cosby lost their only son to an act of senseless violence during an attempted robbery near Interstate 405 in Los Angeles, California. Reports of the evening state Ennis Cosby, Bill's son, was driving north on the interstate when he suffered a flat tire and pulled into Skirball Center Drive at 1 a.m. to install the spare tire. Shortly after, an 18-year-old Soviet refugee, Mikhail Markasev, shot Ennis in the head for taking too long to give him money and left 27-year-old Ennis dead on the side of the road in cold blood. By the end of the year, Markasev was in a maximum security prison, serving life plus 10 years without the possibility of parole, narrowly escaping the death penalty. Comedic Crime Files presents The Murder of Ennis Cosby. At the time of his death, Ennis had just entered the peak of his adult life. He was in a PhD program at Columbia University's Tech College, earning a doctorate in special education, inspired by his own struggles with undiagnosed dyslexia through grade school. After visiting friends in Los Angeles, Ennis Cosby was driving north on Interstate 405. At approximately 1 a.m., Ennis discovered he had a flat tire and pulled into Skirball Center Drive. He phoned a new friend he met the previous week at a party in L.A., 47-year-old Stephanie Crane. Ennis was en route to meet Crane in Sherman Oaks from his parents' home, Pacific Palisades, when he informed her of the delay and instructed her to come to his location and shine the headlights of her luxury Jaguar into his 100K Mercedes convertible so he could see what he was doing. Nobody really knows why the two planned a rendezvous so late in the evening, especially considering they only met a week earlier at a mutual friend's party, and Ennis was due back at Columbia in 5 days. Either way, this encounter would be their last. Robbery was initially thought to be the first motive. However, nothing appeared to be missing. Ennis still had a Rolex watch on his wrist, money in his pocket, and no signs of a struggle. Bill was filming his CBS sitcom Cosby when he found out what happened to Ennis. He was informed by a producer. Once she told him the news, Cosby was stunned and ready to get on his private jet to see his son. However, Cosby was told to stay put as they didn't have a motive for the shooting at the time and was worried for his safety. In addition to this, reporters had been calling all morning and began to gather around the studio and around his homes in Manhattan and Los Angeles. The Cosby family endured a living nightmare throughout the entire process. After news broke of Ennis's death, tabloid and news media began hounding Bill and the rest of his family for comments related to the events. But the only quote they got was from Bill as he walked into his Manhattan home and said, "He was my hero." Before Ennis's body was removed from the crime scene, a picture was taken from a news helicopter. The local station KTLA decided that the image was too bloody to air. However, the footage was picked up by CNN and ran all across the country. Soon after, hundreds of angry phone calls and protesters made their voices heard. Less than a half an hour later, Bobby Batista came on the air and apologized to CNN viewers and the Cosby's family. Weeks after the incident, the National Enquirer ran a cover story alleging that Camille Cosby was sedated and on the verge of a nervous breakdown. In response, Camille wrote an op-ed piece disputing it. As a result, the tabloid offered to pay $100,000 for information leading to Ennis's killer. However, the Cosbys then announced they didn't want the help. Despite the refusal, a man named Christopher So contacted the tabloid and revealed that he met someone who was bragging that he shot Bill Cosby's son. According to Whitaker's book, Markasev had showed So where he hid the murder weapon. When police searched the area So told them about, they found a .38 caliber handgun. Tests showed that the gun found matched the bullet that killed Ennis. When the trial took place more than a year later, Stephanie Crane was the only eyewitness of the events that immediately led up to and followed Ennis's death, but she never actually saw Markasev fire the fatal shot. The LA Times published their testimony June of 1998 and said this: "While sitting in the car with the motor and heater running and watching Cosby change the tire in the glow of her headlights, a man wearing a light-colored knit hat appeared at the window. 'Open the door or I'll kill you,' he told her," Crane said. Frightened, she sped away, but only for about 50 feet. She then stopped and turned around, hoping her actions would scare the intruder away, she said. "I didn't see Ennis and I started screaming, 'Ennis! Ennis!'" Crane recalled. "At the moment, she saw a man running toward a parked car not far away. Then I looked down and saw Ennis lying on the ground," she said. According to the LA Times, Cosby didn't move fast enough for the robber and angered him even more by asking him to hold on. Michael Chang and Sarah Peters, two people who were with Markasov, remembered a conversation they had with him shortly after the murder. He just blasted him. He said he took too long. Michael Chang. In Chang's testimony, he revealed what else Markasov said. Then you know what the nigger told me? He told me he never had a gun to his face before and to kick back to hold on. Chang told the courts it was kind of like, can you believe what he said to me? Markasov's public defender Hank Hall tried to challenge credibility of the story, claiming Stephanie Crane failed to identify him in a lineup of suspected offenders. According to Hall, the killer was one of Markasov's drug friends who was with him that night, Eli Zakaria. Hall insisted Crane's description of the killer as 25 to 35 years of age, 5'10", bumbling and unsure of himself. Better described Zakaria than his client, citing her reasoning that Markasov seemed tall and confident in the lineup, and pounced on her uncertainty that the killer was pale because she told detective the light from Ennis's car may have made the killer appear pale and yellowish. Crane's failure to recognize Markasov after that night is reasonable given grand jury testimony before the trial from another acquaintance of Markasov, Sarah Peters, who said they were loaded on heroin and cocaine, which made them appear nervous and jittery, and a description of Markasov by an investigator as hard beyond his years, a poetic way of saying he seemed older than he was. Another LA Times article published July 16, 1998, includes Peters' grand jury testimony in which she admits to being with Zakaria and Markasov just before the murder. Peters, her boyfriend Eli, Zakaria, and Markasov stopped at a bank of phone booths at a park and ride lot about 450 feet away from where Cosby was changing his tire. While Zakaria talked on the phone, Peters said Markasov left the car without saying specifically where he was going, but leaving Peters with the vague impression that he was going to rob someone. Within minutes, she said she heard a noise like a car backfiring, and a panicked Markasov came running back to the car saying, "Let's go, we've got to get out of here, let's go." The article goes on to describe the aftermath. Afterwards, the three went to a friend's house where Zakaria and Markasov started watching television news about the Cosby killing. Markasov was kind of zoned out to the TV with a really upset, scared-like look on his face. He was really scared. Peters testified. At one point, she acknowledged to the grand jury that she once told police that she heard Markasov bemoaning his predicament. Why did it have to happen? Why did I have to do it? It only took 2 weeks to convict Markasov between Crane's testimony placing him at the scene of the murder, discovery of the murder weapon with DNA evidence connecting him to it, and a jailhouse letter he wrote during the trial that said, "I shot the nigger. I went to rob a drug connection and obviously found something else." This, as well as Markasov's other incriminating words, helped end the trial. Prosecutors played secretly recorded tapes of Markasov. They presented self-incriminating notes that had been found in his jail cell. "They got a lot on me." The quote, "slang for gun, a beanie, other witnesses, robbery gone bad." Less than 6 hours, the jury found Markasov guilty of attempted robbery and first-degree murder. Because the murder was committed during a robbery, California law states the crime could have been punished by death, but prosecutors chose to seek life in prison instead. Bill and Camille asked the court to go with the latter option due to their philosophical objection to the death penalty. Even though Markasov was sentenced without the possibility of parole, he was legally entitled to a thorough appeal process. But out of nowhere, he wrote Deputy Attorney General Kyle Brody requesting the process be suspended. Part of his letter reads, "Although my appeal is in its beginning stages, I don't want to continue with it because it's based on falsehood and deceit. I am guilty and I want to do the right thing. More than anything, I want to apologize to the victim's family. It is my duty as a Christian, and it's the least I can do after the great wickedness for which I am responsible." Throughout the entire duration of the trial, the Cosbys only attended once, so they could look at their son's killer in the eye. Another reason they largely stayed away was because this was intended to be a moment of solemn justice, not celebrity admiration. Both Cosby parents, specifically Camille, were highly uncomfortable with the way the media covered the tragedy. The media constantly pushed race, wealth, and notoriety as other factors involved. Looking for an explanation on their son's death, Bill heard one possible explanation for their son's death. Someone suggested that this was an act of God's will. Woman: "You know, God called for Ennis because God wanted Ennis." Bill Cosby: "No, he didn't. God wouldn't do that to Ennis because he knew what he was going to do, and he didn't need Ennis with all those souls up there. The man who pulled that trigger was riding with Satan." Please stay up to date with the latest news in comedy by subscribing here to our YouTube channel. Follow Comedy Hype across all social media, and be sure to look out for original content on our new streaming service at comedyhype.com. For Comedy Hype news, as always, this has been Elena Williams with another Comedic Crime Files.